Everyone, welcome once again to another Double Toasted interview. You know me, I'm Corey Coleman. It's in the middle of the day, so it must mean that we are talking to someone pretty great. And today I always say it's an honor, and it always truly is. But today I feel this might be an interview where I sit back and I might stammer some of my words. You might see me just sit here in awe of this person right here. Don't mean to make you feel uncomfortable, Don, while praising you so much. But people, if you don't know the name, you will definitely know what the man has done. Please welcome Mr. Don Hahn over here, producer extraordinaire, producer of some of the greatest Disney animated classics ever. Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Little Mermaid. Also, very talented man outside of that, documentary filmmaker. And we're going to be talking about his latest documentary, which you can find on Disney Plus. Speaking of these animated classics that he has done. First of all, welcome, Don, to the show. I appreciate you being here so much.
Thank you, Corey. It's my pleasure to be here.
And I just want to show people very quickly your latest work right here, the documentary, Howard. This is the documentary about Howard Ashman. Howard Ashman, again, speaking of some of these Disney classics that we're speaking of, he's the songwriter whose words had a huge, huge influence on some of those works. Tragically died of AIDS at the age of 40, if I am correct, Don.
Yes.
And this is the documentary that you can now find again on Disney Plus that he's made.
As a lyricist, the last great place to do musicals is in animation.
And Howard said, we really have to have a serious talk. I'm sick.
You know, thank you again, once again, Don, for being here. And I want to start this off asking you, and let me actually make sure that everyone is here right now. Yes, we are. Everyone is welcoming you also in our chat. They're saying legendary, hello. Thanks for being here, Don. So people are appreciating you being here too. Let me just start off talking about the documentary, if you wouldn't mind. We're going to get into everything with you, your career, yourself. But with
Sure.
this documentary that you have, you obviously and clearly had some great feelings towards Howard Ashman. I'm sure you could say he was a friend. So what was the inspiration for doing this documentary now? Was this something that you had been working on for a while, or was it something that Disney Plus, the platform, actually presented an opportunity for you to do?
No, I did it myself. I wanted to make it as an independent movie, and actually Disney Plus wasn't even around when I started it. So it was really I knew Howard, as you said, and we were we were colleagues. We were like anybody else that you work with. And what's funny is you think you know people you work with, but you usually don't really know them. Um, I produced Beauty and the Beast. I didn't produce every movie from the 80s or 90s, believe me. I did Beauty and the Beast, and I did Lion King, and I did some of those. But um, I really benefited by Howard and him being in the studio. If you remember back then, we weren't making that many movies at Disney, that many animated movies. They probably weren't A-plus movies, to be kind. And but there was a young generation of people in the studio, like John Musker and Tim Burton and John Lasseter, and people that were just coming into the studio out of college who wanted to do great work. There was a great group of executives coming into the studio at the same time, and then Howard had just had a big failure on Broadway, and he came out to work with Disney at the same time. So that's why I wanted to tell that story, because it was kind of a perfect storm of all those elements coming together, and that made it really interesting. And of course, most of us or our children grew up with those movies. So Howard, you know his lyrics, and you just didn't know the story. There's never been a film or a biography or anything about him.
When you say he had his failure on Broadway, what was that failure?
Well, he had just done. Well, he came to New York in his 20s. He was a young man. He moved to New York and started a theater, which is in itself amazing because You couldn't afford to do that now. I mean, you can't afford to live in New York, much less start a theater. So he had this little 99-seat theater in a kind of warehouse on the second floor. And that's where he did plays and musicals like Little Shop of Horrors, which became a huge hit for him.
Yeah.
After that, he collaborated with Marvin Hamlish, who was a huge Broadway composer who did Chorus Line. And the two of them were doing a musical called Smile. It was about a beauty contest. And it just didn't work. It was open for, I think it opened on Broadway and closed 45 days later. It just didn't get good reviews. And for whatever reasons, it didn't work. And Howard was really devastated by that and kind of frustrated with Broadway. He never wanted to have these huge Broadway hits, with 1,300 people crammed into a theater.
Mm-hmm.
He was really more into intimate, smaller shows. That's why his theater was only 99 seats. So in the middle of that, then he got a letter and a call from a guy named Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the head of Disney Pictures at the time, and said, well, why don't you come out and work with us? And the first thing he did was he worked with at Disney with Tina Turner on a movie called I, Tina, which I think eventually became What's Love Got to Do with It or something like that. And what's cool is in my research, I found these great long tapes of Howard and Tina Turner talking for hours while she's making sandwiches for lunch and stuff. So, but I think he found a home in animation that was much more friendly, much more collegial, much more collaborative, maybe. And that became a place where he was really comfortable.
Yeah, again, that's a lot of history that people don't know right there. And with his death, with him dying of AIDS at the age of 40, and with you being so close to him at during the time he was at Disney, did he ever confide in you about him being ill, about him being sick at all?
No, he never did. You have to take yourself back to that time in the which would have been the late 80s, and getting a diagnosis of HIV or eventually that would become AIDS was like a death sentence. And it was a very conservative government at the time. I think Ronald Reagan was the president, and he wasn't acknowledging that there was a crisis with AIDS, this epidemic that was sweeping through the community, because it was seen to be kind of a gay disease, and it wasn't. It ended up hitting every segment of the population. But in any case, if you got that disease, you just didn't declare it to anybody. And in fact, Howard didn't declare it really to Disney until it was much later and kind of obvious that he was sick. He didn't even tell Alan Menken, who was his songwriting partner, until after Little Mermaid. So they had been through one of the Disney movies already. So it was just a protective era, and you were worried about losing your insurance. You were worried about losing your job in some cases because there weren't those protective laws out there to, protect people from the LGBTQ community. So,
man, it's incredible to see just how much time has passed, and I guess you could say even progress. I mean, you're coming from a time when people didn't want to tell some of their closest friends what was going on with them. That's very interesting. Kind of sad too, that this person felt so trapped that they couldn't express this to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you would tell your friends, people didn't know what to do with that news. It's like, I guess it's like saying I have cancer or I have COVID-19 or something. People are empathetic and they're sorry to hear it, but they don't know whether to distance, like run away or come, and so there was a lot of suspicion surrounding it, a lot of, just fear, I guess. And you see, it's ironic that we're releasing this movie now because a little bit of that exists with the pandemic we're kind of going through right now. But it was very much that way in the 80s. So that's why Howard even moved out of New York, and his partner is a really brilliant architect, and they together built a house up out of the city and up Hudson River to have a future together. And then sadly, they didn't really ever have a future together.
That is sad. You talk about him and his partner being over at Disney. I mean, was it okay? So the illness is something that a lot of people couldn't come out with and say anything to anyone. But what about his sexuality? I mean, was that something that was known and accepted at the studio at the time?
Yeah, I would say so. I think if you work in the entertainment business, regardless of what you do, whether you're a writer, director, lyricist, songwriter, dancer, whatever, there's a lot of variety of sexual orientation in the arts, and that's a good thing. People are a little more open about that and a little more accommodating and accepting. So yeah, we had lots of gay guys in the studio and lesbians and all kinds of people in the studio, and it was very accepted. So that was never a problem. And what's weird is this the kind of thing you never talk about. It just didn't matter. You would never talk about anybody's sexuality in a work environment, really. So the fact that he was gay was not an issue at all. It was really more when he became sick that it became just awkward for him more than for us. Once we figured it out, we literally moved back to New York to work with him. At first we thought he was just being a diva about his, he just won an Oscar for Little Mermaid, and we thought, oh, he's just being a diva. And but we did. I took the whole story crew back there, and Linda Wolverton, our writer, and Alan Menken, our composer, and we moved into a hotel in upstate New York to work with Howard. And then later we found out why we were doing that. We were doing it because he was sick and he couldn't travel.
Yeah, that's again, people, just to show you what how much time has passed and how much difference has been we've made. You look at stories like that, and I have to say, especially during times like this, it seems very dire right now, very bleak to people, and we kind of lose sight of the progress that we have made during that time.
Yeah.
And hearing you say this, that's even kind of inspiring to know that people don't have to go through that now, like what you're telling me people had to go through back then. That's very nice to hear.
Yeah, it's a really good point because there's no question we're going through some challenging times right now in pretty much every way. But I think that's just human beings. Sadly, we go through those things, and
Yeah.
I suppose that's why we make movies and tell stories, because it gives people hope and entertains people, takes their mind off of these things, and we have made progress. We really have.
Yeah. To move this to a more positive note about Howard Ashman, you hear someone like a legendary animator, Glenn Keane, we talking about how much Howard Ashman's music and his lyrics have had an influence on these films. In the creation of, for the animators themselves, in the creation of the characters, the life that they gave them. And I got a clip right here from I think this is your directorial debut, Waking Sleeping Beauty.
Yes.
Where Glenn Keane actually speaks on this, how much Howard Ashman's lyrics, just as the lyrics alone, had an influence on him wanting to do the animation for Ariel and The Little Mermaid.
In almost every musical ever written,
It just captivated me. I thought, I have to do that. And I went and told those guys, I really want to do Ariel.
How much of Howard Ashman's music and lyrics, how much of that did it have an influence on the visuals of these animated movies that we've known to watch and love throughout the years?
Well, it had a tremendous amount to do with it, because if you take a song like Under the Sea, where the lyrics are all about, darling, it's better down where it's wetter, take it from me. He's constantly talking about, fish playing instruments and calypso music and all that kind of stuff. And so you're storyboarding that and animating it based largely on what he's saying in those lyrics. Or in the opening of Beauty and the Beast is a 5-minute song, and he's, the lyrics are, look, there she goes, the girl who's so peculiar, and she's reading a book and stuff. That says that in the lyrics, and of course we wrote that first before it was musicalized. But a song is a huge advantage to an animator and a filmmaker in general, because it's like this big piece of entertainment. And what Howard did so well, better than anyone at the time, was to put the plot in the song. He would take the story and stick it right in the middle of the song. So you have a song like Ursula the Sea Witch in Little Mermaid. Ariel meets her. She doesn't even know Ursula exists, and 2 minutes later, she's signing her voice away. So there's so much plot in those songs, and that's what makes a good musical. And I think before Howard, we were making movies with a few songs in them, but that wasn't a musical. What was a musical was having a film where the essential big emotional moments were in the songs. So the love song and the entertaining song, Be Our Guest or something like that. Those were all plot songs that told you the story and moved the story ahead.
Mm-hmm. That's again, people. I'm sure you can see some of this itself in the documentary that Don has on Disney Plus right now, which is Howard. The story of Howard Ashman, his career of Disney, his influence on these animated films that, again, we've grown to love throughout the years. They're masterpieces now, considered to be masterpieces in the second golden age of animation over at Disney. And you can watch this documentary right now on Disney Plus. And if you're just tuning in, I am talking to Don Hahn. Don Hahn, as we've just told you, is documentary filmmaker. You can see his documentary right now, Howard, on Disney Plus. And he is also producer extraordinaire, which is why I want to switch to his career right now. We've talked about Howard Ashman, but you are a fascinating person yourself. You've been a part of so much film history. You've worked with so many legends. You produced some of the biggest animated films of all time, as I said. That's how I started out this interview. We talked about how you are the producer of Lion King, one of the most successful, if not the most successful animated movie of all time. You produced Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast being the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. I, coming from a background in animation, I told you there was a lot of your history that meant a lot to me. That's not one of the ones I was really talking about right there, but that is a huge one. That meant a lot to me to see an animated movie be nominated for Best Picture, for animation to be taken seriously. That was almost like validation for the art form of animation. Again, that's why I say it's truly an honor to be sitting here talking to you. I love these movies as much as anybody else does, but to talk to somebody who's behind them being made, the creation of them, the man that probably they wouldn't be here if you weren't here, is truly it's overwhelming for me. Which brings me to the question. With you having done so much, and I'm just going to be straightforward with this. Do you get up in the morning and look at your wall of accomplishments and you say to yourself, you know what, I'm truly a badass. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Or have you done so much that you're just like, you know what, it's just another day of being me. Ain't no big thing. How is it being the producer behind these huge movies?
No, I don't think that way. In animation, as you know, it's such a collaborative sport. You can't point to one person in any movie, in my opinion, and say, oh, that's, Don's movie or whatever. It takes so many people and so many major contributions from directors and voice actors and musicians and animators. So I always looked at it as more of a team sport, that if we got a Best Picture nomination, we all did. Because it's the truth, you can't let your ego kind of take you away, because the truth is there's going to be another movie after that, and you have to start with a blank piece of paper, and your ego does absolutely no good. It doesn't help you make a better movie.
Yeah.
So you might feel good for a while and certainly proud for a while. But no, I wake up every morning, terrified of trying to think of some new ideas and some new ways to express myself or new people to collaborate with. And that's what gets me excited. The working with interesting people or telling an interesting story is something I love. I love storytelling and love the people that tell stories. So that's where I get my kind of buzz off of and enjoy it. The awards and all that stuff is wonderful, but I try not to think about that, honestly, because it doesn't help you. It doesn't get you anything. what gets you something is the hard work of just, pulling together a team of people and jumping into a project.
No, that's great to hear, man. I mean, especially working in an industry where there's so much ego involved.
Yeah.
Well, I got a quick question. This is a kind of a geek question right here.
Sure.
The statuettes behind you, are those the statuettes that the animators used? While they were...
Yeah, they are. They're that's the Beast over here, and Mrs. Potts above him, and then on the other side is Gaston, and those are animator maquettes. So we made those back in probably 1990 when we were making the movie, and those become drawing models for the animators to use. So I'm at home, and I'm lucky to have a few of them around. So that's what they are.
That's funny. I think I've actually seen some making ofs, behind the scenes documentaries where I think I've seen those maquettes actually used in the scene. So no, that's very cool. Have you, of course, not asking you to name names or anything, but being that you are working in a business with huge egos, I mean, you clearly are very humble, which is very great to see. But in these productions, do you often run across a lot of egos that you clash with?
I have to honestly say, in animation, not so much. In some of the live action movies, absolutely. There's something more raw and more vulnerable, and often more ego shows up when you have a live action film you're trying to shoot in a short period of time. There's a lot of pressure for who has the bigger dressing room or the bigger trailer, or all that stuff, and that's really unpleasant. In animation, I don't know how to describe it, but those of you listening will know this. It's just more of a family collegial kind of group, because it's just damn hard to do an animated movie. And also in animation, the best idea wins. It's not, you don't say, well, I'm going to do Don's idea because Don, won an award, or Don is, bigger than all of us. That's horrible. You go with an idea for your movie, or a story idea, or a character design, because it's the best idea. So you're not trying to power someone's ego by doing, yes, whatever you say, Don, that's it's great. Hey, Corey, whatever you want, that's fine. That's what we're going to do. You just don't operate that way in animation. You really sit around a table and try to come up with the right idea, and then make that as good as you can.
How much of a role does a producer have when it comes to, I mean, it's probably different for every project, probably different for every studio, but I mean, the movies that you've produced, how much of a role does a producer have in those animated films?
Well, in animation, it's very hands-on. It's almost a producer's medium, although I hesitate to say that. But if you look at like Walt Disney was a producer. Walt Disney never was a director. He was a producer of his films. So I'm no Walt Disney for sure, but you really have a lot of opportunity as a producer. My main job, though, is pulling together a team of people and then supporting them. So it's in a funny way, it's kind of a servant's job, because at least the way I do it, and every producer does it differently. Every producer produces differently, and that's probably good. But for animation, I like to pull together interesting people, great directors, writers, art directors, animators, and you're kind of building a team. It's like a football team, and trying to get them to collaborate and trying to give them the tools they need, whether it's computers or pencils or paper, trying to go on field trips to educate them. Like on Lion King, we went to Kenya and studied wildlife, and went to the zoo and drew lions. And, so you do your best to put that team together. And that goes back to people like Howard and Alan again, or Elton John and Tim Rice. You're trying to add a musical component to those teams that is the best you can do. And then really you stay out of the way. It's like they don't need help. I don't have to sit in there and help Howard Ashman write some lyrics. I need to stay out of his way and make sure he has everything he needs to do his best work. So that's really my job.
No, this question I'm about to ask, no way. This is going to sound probably a little heavier than the way I'm putting it right now. But
No,
by no means do you. Am I asking you to badmouth something? What if I ask this?
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know. It's going to just be a good one. But by no means do you feel obligated to even answer. I'm not trying to ask for any dirt or anything. I just think that this is an obvious question to ask while I have you here. So, you know, you've been such a part of these animated classics, throughout time, throughout history. And these classics that you've been involved with, now you're starting to see, and I think that the ones that you have done, now you're starting to see, and you probably know where I'm going with this. All the ones that you produced, at least the ones I know of, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King.
A true king searches for what he can give.
The live action remake of The Lion King is what we're looking at right there. What are your feelings towards seeing that the movies that you have had such a huge part of being turned into live action remakes?
Well, it's odd. It's like somebody taking your child and, changing his clothes and shaving his head. And, like it's a different thing. But overall, I feel good about it because you have people like with Lion King, Jon Favreau, or Bill Condon directed Beauty and the Beast. They put in a tremendous amount of effort to rise to the occasion. And Jon Favreau is a brilliant director. He on every score, he's probably one of the best working today. So when he takes a story, that's a good feeling. Technically, it was an amazing feeling. The voice cast was amazing on that movie. And I always believe that stories are made to be told. It doesn't do any good to have Lion King parked in the garage and just sitting on a shelf. Even though it's an original story that we made up, it's not totally original. It's based a little bit on some Bible stories like the Joseph story or the Moses story, based a little bit on Hamlet, that hero's journey story. So we steal and borrow liberally from other stories for the last few centuries. And it makes sense for other people to remake them. So overall, I like it. I may have different feelings about the movies themselves, but overall, it's good. It's meant to be, and stories are meant to be told, and I welcome that.
Yeah, it's good to hear because, I think that you kind of hit on something right there that, when you say that The Lion King or any of the stories not meant to be put there on a shelf, whether you like these movies or not, I know they've been very divisive towards a lot of people. But, the bottom line is that, they're not meant to just sit there, as you say, or the one that is sitting there, you'll always have that one. And then you'll have this one if you like it.
You can always put in the original Lion King, and some people like to do that. I think you can even, like if you subscribe to a Disney Plus or something, you can see the original Lion King. So you have choices, and that's the other reason why I never mind it, because nobody's burning the original negative. That'll be there. But there's some really wonderful performances and things in these newer movies. And, look at what Beyonce just did on the Disney Channel with her big kind of extended music video. It's visually spectacular, and it's inspired by The Lion King.
Yeah.
And I feel like, that's what people should do.
Yeah. No. Maybe now that people hear from you, they'll settle down and be quiet,
Yeah, no, it's like if you don't like it, don't go. But, if you look at Walt Disney's career, any name a director, including Howard Ashman, they're great at adapting things. Walt Disney took stories like Pinocchio and Snow White and Bambi, all of which existed either as books or as fairy tales, and just retold them and changed them a lot. Go read the original Pinocchio. It's horrifying. So I figure if Walt Disney can do it, that's fine. Howard would take things like Little Shop of Horrors. He would say, let's take 50s girl group rock and roll and combine it with this Roger Corman monster movie, and that's going to be Little Shop of Horrors. Or let's adapt Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid and put that with like reggae music and Caribbean music, and that'll be Little Mermaid. So he was great at adapting and retelling things, and all of his hits. He did an early musical called God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, which was an adaptation of a Kurt Vonnegut book. So, there was nothing original about the source material, but what was original and what was brilliant about Howard was that he adapted it and was able to turn that into, something that was fresh and interesting and something you wanted to see. So it's the nature of life in the arts. We all do it. We
it's
all should do it.
no, you're definitely right about what you're saying, about these adaptations. I mean, when people get upset about seeing something made live action, they're usually getting upset because you taking a movie that I love, and I feel like I own that. It's my thing. We
Yeah.
really don't. When you're going back to Howard Ashman, you're right. It's almost like the theme of this interview of what we're doing here is talking about how we take things and make them different. Little Shop of Horrors was
Yep.
was definitely way different than the original film, which was more funny and just very much more cheap.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Seeing people take things and maybe not necessarily making it lesser or better, but seeing them making their own things have led up to some of the greatest things that we have right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to talk to you now. Let's get to the part where I said that you are. There's a part of history that I just completely am in love with from my childhood that has stayed with me today, and you were a part of that. I am a huge fan of the animator Don Bluth.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that if anybody had an influence on kind of what I'm doing today, even if it's way different than what I'm doing today from animation, Don Bluth probably had a big influence on me on that. Don Bluth, as you know, he became very popular with the mainstream with things like Dragon's Lair. He did The Secret of NIMH, did a lot of other movies that a lot of people grew up with. That's one of the things that first got me into him was Dragon's Lair, because I was a huge video gamer and an animation fan. Having those two things come together was monumentous in my life. But the thing that I want to bring up is something that a lot of people, even some of the biggest fans of Don Bluth, don't remember a whole lot. And that is, now I believe that this is, you can correct me because you were there. I think the first thing that he did on his way out of parting with Disney was this, I guess you could say it's a short. It was Banjo the Woodpile Cat. You probably recognize the voice in the clip that I'm about to play.
I'll stick with you, kid, you stick with me. Together we'll overcome adversity.
The reason why I bring this up is because in my obsessive reading of Don Bluth and his history, I remember them talking about how he was working on Banjo the Woodpile Cat in his garage at nights while he was still working at Disney on his way to, I guess, trying to make his own studio. And you were there during that time, I believe.
I was.
So first of all, that's incredible to me. I even wrote a letter to Don Bluth saying, I remember when I was a kid, I remember writing a letter till I was like around, I guess 12 or 11. I was like, I remember you working on Banjo the Woodpile Cat. I have that movie and I love it. And unfortunately, I think he had moved to Ireland, so the letter got sent back. So I never got to, he never got to read it. But this is the closest I'm probably gonna get to it right now. The reason why I bring that up is because, well, you're a part of that history that I obsess over. The other is being that you were there. So you're a producer, filmmaker. Are you also an artist and animator?
Well, I am. I mean, I was a music major in college, and so my background is music and art. I'm a painter, and I animated for a while, but I saw pretty early on I wasn't going to be a great animator, and I also like sitting at a drawing board for 40, 50 hours a week was really hard for me. I think I'm probably a little attention deficit, so the chance to work in a job that involved more people and more challenges and more variety, I guess, was something that was a better fit for me. But I loved animation. I didn't want to go off and do something else. So that's where I kind of migrated into production, like management, and then producing eventually. Mm-hmm. But some of my really early experiences were with people like Don Bluth, and I really value that because I think I was 20 years old when I started working for Don. I worked with him at Disney. I was his assistant. Like I would, fill out his checkbook and take his dry cleaning in and get him a drink or whatever. And then on the weekends, we would go to his house and, as you say, work on Banjo. And that was like free school for me. It was a chance to sit there and work with people like John Pomeroy and Gary Goldman and all these great animators. That was the first time I got to shoot on an animation camera or paint a cell or do an in-between, learn all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For a 20-year-old kid right out of school, it was like an amazing just luck to be able to fall into that. And Don was really good at it. Don was around at Disney during Sleeping Beauty, and we looked to him as kind of the older, more mature, more experienced mentor to all of us. And, and we were really loyal to him. And rightly so. He's a really talented guy, not just in terms of his drawing and draftsmanship, but in terms of his music. I think that song that you just played was probably written by him. I think I was probably there that day when we recorded that song, which is scary because that was probably 1978 or 9 when we recorded that. So, so yeah, I have a lot of respect for Don, and he's still at it. He and Gary Goldman are down in Arizona, and they still talk about doing some shows from time to time. So he's the real deal.
Yeah, no, I think he's incredible, and I think it's incredible that all of the different branches of history that have shot off from that.
Yeah, it's true.
Knowing that that's a jump from cleaning his underwear to being the producer of Beauty and the Beast and Lion
Well,
King.
I had help, and it took a good 10 years or so. So it wasn't like it happened overnight. But Disney was always and still is a place where you can move around and flex your muscles. And also back then animation wasn't a big deal. Disney would do an animated film every 4 years, and there weren't any other studios really except for Don Bluth and maybe Ralph Bakshi or something doing animation. It was not a very popular thing, which is hard to believe because now everybody's doing animation and there's just 25 or 30 movies a year. So
yeah, I love hearing how people have a different approach to animation. I mean, you think that working at a desk at Disney doing animation, that's the dream job, and then I hear people who have this whole thought of Tim Burton being included. I think I'm one of those people too, where just kind of like, hey, you know what? This is awesome. I love animation, but I just can't see myself being at this desk all day drawing like this. Yeah. I'm the same way. I realized early on too. It's like it hurt kind of at first because all I wanted to do growing up was animation, and then I was like, you know what? I'm not very good at this. So,
I was the same way, and I'm grateful that I could see, because I would see people like Glenn Keane or Brad Bird or other people that were really good animators, and I wasn't, and I knew that, and I wasn't necessarily a director either. I wasn't going to be somebody who was like a Tim Burton type. So I was lucky to kind of do what I did because my artistic background made me really appreciate how hard it is to draw, how hard it is to come up with a story. And so I always had respect, and still do, great respect for the people that work in animation.
Yeah. I'm like you. I still love it. I think I'm under the right circumstances, I'm okay at it. But man, there are some people that I would look at me and I'm like, man, you'll put me to shame if I'm next to you. And I don't want to feel like that.
I get it. I understand.
Continuing with animation, and again, talking about some of the movies you've done, like again, people. I'm having a conversation with Don Hahn. Don Hahn, producer extraordinaire, produced The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. Also, documentary filmmaker. You can find his documentary Howard about songwriter Howard Ashman on Disney Plus, who also had a big influence on these big classic masterpieces, animated masterpieces from Disney. Now, stepping outside of those huge successes, just like anybody who might have a long, illustrious career as yourself, there are some moments where they're not going to always be up. You're going to have some downs. You worked on a movie that I liked, but I saw the flaws in it. You worked on The Black Cauldron. This was a PG animated adventure fantasy. It was even a little dark for something that they had done. I thought that was, for me, somebody who wanted to see animation be accepted outside of just this being seen as something for kids, that
Right.
stigma that's on it. I thought that was incredible that Disney had done that. I really was rooting for it to do well, which, if my mind serves me correct, it did not. I think was even considered a flop for Disney at the time.
Yeah, it was really expensive, and that contributed to it. and it just wasn't that great of a movie. It's full of good work, and nobody sets out to make a bad movie. So the producer and the directors on that movie were really experienced guys from Disney from years and years. And I think that the goal, the aspiration, was to do something like you said, do a kind of adventure movie that was a little older, for a more general movie audience instead of just kids or families. And so we learned a lot of lessons. The group on that movie that animated it was young, really young. It could certainly be dark. Walt Disney's movies were really dark at times. You think of Bambi's mother getting killed, or Snow White getting poisoned by a witch and dying on screen. They were always not afraid of that. But it's also trying to bring some entertainment and some just good storytelling to it all. And Cauldron didn't quite come together as a story. And it did feel a little dark at the end of the day. And you don't want anybody to say that in the reviews, but people were saying, you may not want to take your kids. It's a little dark. And that's the kiss of death. So as much as we tried, it was a tough movie to make. It was expensive. Halfway through it, a new management came into the Disney studios. Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg came into Disney. And we tried to make some changes for them, and it just became a really tough movie to make. So, good people with good intentions, but it just didn't come together.
When you put so much time, because as you've stated, and as anybody who knows anything about animation, expensive, time consuming. When you do it on that scale. What's it like putting years of work into something, a huge project like that involves so many people, and then just feeling like it's kind of rejected, in a week when it's put out there? What is that feeling like?
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, in a weekend, on some movies, it's painful. We all know that feeling, though. We all know the feeling of whether it's a piece of art we're doing, or something we're doing for a boss at work or for our family that doesn't work out. It's disappointing, hugely disappointing. For anybody, you see that, like we were talking about Howard's disappointment of Smile on Broadway, and it just laid him out for 6 months where he just didn't do anything. But sometimes things can stand the test of time. Like I worked on a movie called Emperor's New Groove, and at the time it wasn't a huge box office success. People went and saw it, but it's become this kind of cult movie, and people love it now. So you never know, what's going to happen. Even movies like Pinocchio and some of Walt Disney's movies were not big successes when they came out. So sometimes time will, shed a light on a movie that maybe wasn't that popular when it first came out.
Yeah. I just, you hear people when they come out, because look, I'm guilty of this too. We kind of founded this whole thing on just doing movie reviews, being critics, if quote unquote critics. And there's a certain amount of guilt on being on both sides, on the creative side of something, and sitting up here as a spectator, an audience member. I don't know if a lot of people feel it, but there's a lot of guilt that goes in on my part when I see this. I almost want to just stop it sometimes, even for when the worst movies are out there. I realize like there's a lot of people that work on this, and there's somebody, and there's weeks, months, years of work that go into this, and then people are just trying to tear it down in a matter of minutes, And there's an empathy that goes there, man. That's what brought me to ask that question. I like to ask that question of everybody just to get individual answers, because I kind of understand, and everybody thinks you make this movie, you get your money, and you're fine. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna move on to the next one, and it's like, nah, man, that's kind of heartbreaking when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, you don't do it just for the money. I think I don't, and I think probably 100% of the people that I work with do it because they love it, and they love the art form, and they love making movies. And yes, you have to get paid, and yes, you have to pay your bills and stuff, but you do it because it's fun, it's challenging, it's impossible, and when it's done right, it's exciting, it's thrilling, and so hope springs eternal, and you always want to try. And that's the tough thing about the movie business. It's especially since some of the movies get so expensive that you may only get, 2 or 3 times to try in your career to direct a film, really. And that's sad, because there's great directors out there that only get a few chances. It's a little bit easier with producers because you can have several projects going. So I've probably done a lot more in terms of the numbers of films. But yeah, it's like any of us. You just get really disappointed and upset, if things don't come together, because everybody tries to make a good movie.
No, I get it. I get it. I mean, it's one thing you have to consider. Even with some of the worst movies, it's not just one solo effort. You could take it on director, but there's a lot of people involved.
Yeah.
About to wrap things up in a little bit, and also as we do that, we're gonna kind of steer out of animation. I mean, again, we could go on and on about how much you've done in animation. You've done, and you've worked with some amazing people out there. In addition to the people that we've also talked about, Steven Spielberg, Kathleen Kennedy. I believe you were producer on the Roger. I don't know how many there was like 2 or 3 Roger Rabbit shorts. I know you worked on Tummy Trouble, that was shown before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I don't know if there's any interesting stories you'd like to put in there on that. You can. I was just showing that people, again, your long roster of animated projects that you worked on.
I'm very, very old. No, I think that the first movie I was associate producer was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And we did that in London. We shot it in London. We did the animation in London with Richard Williams. And so that was a big break for me to work with those people, because Bob Zemeckis, who directed that movie, is brilliant. And then his support group, like Steven Spielberg and Kathy Kennedy and Frank Marshall, were brilliant. So I learned a lot and really had a good time on that movie. When I came back, the first thing I did as a full producer credit was Tummy Trouble that you just showed. And that was perfect for me because it was a short. It was pretty quick to get it done. And at the time, we were trying to keep Roger Rabbit alive until the sequel could come out, because there was an idea to do a sequel. Mm-hmm. Over the years, there's been a number of scripts and ideas, and I'm not sure there'll ever be a sequel, but they're great characters. The movie was hugely popular.
Oh, yeah.
So much so, there was some town at Disneyland, and so that was a real treat to be able to work on that movie, and a great start. And I think that's what the hallmark of my career, I think, is I work really hard and I try to do a good job, as we all do. But I've been really lucky to work with some great, great people along the way, and have learned as much as I could from them. And I'm sure they've learned from me if I kind of offer them something. So that's the key, is to try to find some really interesting people to collaborate with, and try to put that team together and learn as much as you can, because every movie's different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's interesting. I'm glad we did bring this up, because I have a quick question on that.
Yeah.
Why was there never a sequel to Roger Rabbit? Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
There were attempts. There were scripts about it, with all kinds of different story ideas about where Roger came from, how Roger met Jessica, all that stuff. And it just never quite came together, because it takes a number of planets to come into alignment for a movie to come together. You need the right script that's working, that everybody likes. You need a director that's available. You need your cast, your animation crew, all that stuff. And that was a really complicated movie, because it was not just Disney Animation. It was Disney and Warner Brothers Animation, and animation from every major studio, plus live action. So it was like making 2 movies. So it's a very expensive movie to make, and it has to be a great script to begin with, and the pieces have never come together.
Yeah, I guess because I remember that's interesting. I remember hearing, I don't know from where, that this was an attempt to just make Roger Rabbit a huge character, and that's why they were putting this out there. Why did that not happen? The sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and you laid it out right there. I just never considered how much of a gigantic effort it was to bring it together in the first place. Got made
were those shorts, and he's a great character, and they're fun characters to animate. Roger and Jessica and Baby Herman are really fun to draw. So those were great, and who knows, someday maybe somebody will come back with another idea, and a sequel or a cartoon will get made. Who knows?
Yeah, I hope so. A couple of last things right here. So, you made this the switch to documentary filmmaking, and I saw a clip where you were talking about how documentaries are just they're because you, as you've said, you love storytelling so much. I guess I can kind of summarize, and correct me if I got this wrong, but from that clip, it seemed like you were saying that there was just something appealing about being able to tell the stories of real people, real lives out there. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, you are. I think after a certain point, I just thought the world doesn't need another animated feature from Don. I did what I could and did the best I could, and I wanted another chapter in my life, to be honest. And documentaries started to speak to me. First of all, it's become a golden age of documentaries. So the access to the equipment and the technology and all that stuff is so easy. You can make a documentary on your cell phone if you want to. In fact, there's a horror movie that was just made on Zoom, out of Zoom conversations. So the technology is all over the place to make good movies.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to also make movies about social issues and give a voice to people that didn't have a voice. So most of all of the films I've made have been about soldiers returning from Afghanistan and the problems they come across, or the pediatric AIDS crisis, those kinds of things. And it's just a different chapter. That's all how I describe it. And it's not to say I hate Disney or anything. I love it more than ever, actually. And I'm probably doing more work for Disney than I ever have right now. But as a profession, what I love to do is work with a great editor and tell stories like Howard. Or I made a movie a couple years ago with a great director about Tyrus Wong, the Chinese American colorist who colored Bambi and styled Bambi. So I love those stories about artistic heroes, because I think there's a lot of sports heroes, there's a lot of political heroes, but to tell stories about artistic heroes is really important, because there's a bunch of kids out there that need to hear those stories and I was one of them, and need to hear that it's okay to have a career and a life that's it's about expressing yourself and telling stories. So that's why I love to do those now, and it's something I'll probably do for years to come.
Yeah, it was such a huge turn for you to do that. I have your documentary right here. We talk about the background you have in animation, but you mentioned handheld, which is a big detour from probably what people would associate you with normally. This is where you took off time from Disney, and this is about the as you mentioned, it's about you follow a photographer, Mike Carroll, around.
Mike was a Disney photographer. He shot a lot of the Disney magazine photos for a long time, but he also was a journalist, a photojournalist, and he went to Romania when the Soviet Union kind of fell apart, and he stumbled into this crisis where all these children, these babies, were warehoused basically, and were contracting AIDS. And he just fell in love with that story and wanted to help them. And that's what that movie's about. And Mike's still doing it. His organization now employs 30 or 40 people. They are well funded, and they do all this work in Romania. And the weirdest thing is he's not Romanian. He's just a guy from Boston. But he really cares deeply about people. He cares about the greater good. He's a great storyteller because he's kind of Irish American and has a great background in storytelling with his photojournalism. So, sometimes you just run across stories that are compelling and you want to tell them. So that's what I've been doing.
No, that's incredible. That's incredible to see somebody so diverse and just pursuing what they want to pursue. A lot of people just kind of pursue one thing, and they do pursue one thing and they want to do a lot of other things and just don't have the opportunity to do it. It's really inspiring to see you have those opportunities and you taking advantage of them. Last question here. So, with the pandemic going on, how has that affected you? You hear about people who are in productions that have slowed down. They're trying to figure their way around the pandemic to get productions back up and going. Does this push you back more into animation because you hear people who are going into animation more because that's less risky? How is this affecting you?
Well, it does a little bit. It doesn't affect me in a bad way at all. I work with a really small group of people, our producer, Lori Korngable, and our editor, Stephen Yao. We just finished a film for Epcot that's playing. It's a Beauty and the Beast sing-along film, and we did a bunch of new animation for it and installed that right before the pandemic happened. So that was something that we worked on, immediately before the pandemic, and then the rest of the time has been finishing Howard, and that just got finished, probably 2 months ago or so.
Yeah.
So now it's in looking for new material, and I've been reading a lot. I've been looking at a lot of stories and biographies, and looking at some animation. I love animation. There's nothing wrong with it. So looking at documentary ideas, looking at animation, and just sniffing around what's next. I'm kind of slow to warm up to material. And so a lot of it's just trying to try things on, like trying on hats and trying to see what fits.
Yeah. Speaking of trying on hats, you hear about how animation is maturing more. I'm sure, at least in America, it's matured more definitely over the years since you've been involved. And now you hear places, I think they said like over at Sony, they might have 3 R-rated projects going on.
Wow.
Would you be interested in maybe producing or having a hand in more adult or mature-oriented animation?
No, I don't. Maybe I'm a prude, but I just don't care for it that much. I think Roger Rabbit's about as adult as I'm going to get, and that's still a family film. I think it's great that people are doing it, though. It's not necessarily my taste. I enjoy making more kind of general audience movies that anybody can go see. But I'm all for it. I have some friends that are making great independent movies. One of them, Sergio Pablos in Spain, just made Klaus last year, which was nominated for Oscars and Golden Globes and everything. So there's some great independent stuff being done in Japan and Spain and Ireland and all over the map. And now even in America, where you get some really interesting work being done by people. So it's exciting for me to sit back and watch it. The studios are all making a lot of animation. Animation's thriving during the pandemic because people can work from home. The documentaries are thriving too. I can move ahead with a lot of documentaries because documentaries use a lot of photographs and stock material. So I can move ahead at a reasonable pace for the next however long this lasts and try to keep putting some movies together.
Is there a documentary?
And we all adapt. You adapt to change like this.
Oh yeah, is a documentary coming up that you want to mention, or is that on the low?
No, I don't have anything specific that I'm ready to dive in on. So I'm really just in that kind of research phase. But it is an amazing time for documentaries. If any of your listeners are thinking about it, I really recommend it because you can shoot it on your iPhone, and it looks great and sounds great. And for the first time ever, there's a market for documentaries, whether it's on Netflix or on Apple or Amazon. There's a place to put them. It used to be you did a documentary and it would just sit on your shelf, or you'd put it in a film festival. Now there's actually a place to sell it. And you're not going to be rich making documentaries, but if you have a story to tell that's kind of burning in your gut and you have to tell it, now's the time.
Yeah. Well, Don, thank you so much for taking this time. That's very generous of you because I know you're a very busy person and you're a very important person too. So that means a lot to me that you would even do this. Once again, people, I've been talking to Don Hahn, producer of Disney masterpieces such as The Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and also documentary filmmaker. His documentary Howard can be seen right now about Howard Ashman. How his songs had influenced some of these classics that we've seen. It's on Disney Plus right now. And thank you so much once again. This has been an honor.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Corey. Thanks for the great questions, and it's really my pleasure. It's great talking to you.
Oh, you too. Thank you. Hey, you have a good one. Appreciate it.
You too.
Bye-bye. And there he goes. Love to take questions from you guys, man, and have you ask him. But, as always, we're getting to these when we get a good person to interview, they just have great answers. And those answers, fortunately, take up a lot of time. That's what you want. So I want to thank everybody who was here listening, though, and watching. I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you for being here today. Thank you. Thank you. People saying that was fantastic. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Great work. Thank you for the interview. Yeah, folks. As I said, this is great. It's good to do this, and I appreciate your feedback, but you don't really have a great interview unless you have a person who has done some great things and give you great answers. And Don Hahn certainly did. I'm thinking of making a different channel just for these interviews. I see where these interviews are going now. They're going into a direction where we're getting more creatives in areas like animation, creatives online, people who are great internet personalities on YouTube, people doing great things there, talking to directors and producers. These mean a lot to me. They mean a lot to me to be able to talk to people that have in some way or another probably had a great influence on my life. And I want to thank you guys. I want to thank the Toasted community. I want to thank you all for being here and giving me the opportunity to do these. Without you, I wouldn't be able to do these at all. I wouldn't be here doing this. So thank you once again. I really appreciate that. And let me see who's here. Angry Asian, thank you. Thank you. Austin Nick. Jedi G-Man. Ready to die. The hard-boiled one. What is that? Roman numerals. Rom V numerals. You guys get crazy with these names. Patrice Graphics. Yeah, people. Again, we'll be putting that up. You can find it as soon as we're done here. If you missed some of it, you can find it on the VOD here on our Twitch channel. Definitely going to put this up on YouTube. As I said, we'll probably make our own YouTube channel where we put all these interviews up so they can be in their own place as we get these more frequently. So, yeah, people. Ian Stecco says, it's amazing. Give us more. I will do that. Actually, you might have heard about how we're making plans to try to make opportunities for us to do this more. But thank you. Thank you all. This was incredible. Let me see here. Somebody said get some big names. Hey, that is a big name. That guy produced some big things. That is a huge name. That's incredible that man took the time out to do this. But we had some names that you know of. We've had some people like that. So, yeah, man. But I find it interesting to talk to people like this. I mean, you can find interviews on a lot of other people out there today, anywhere. But these right here are very, 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 very cool. All right, guys. Let me see here. Somebody said the biggest name so far. I don't know. We had what you call it in there? Keith David. Big man, big name. All right, folks. We're out of here. Let me go ahead. Quit Skype right here. And let me get on out of here. Hey, people, if you like what we do here, anything that we do here, please subscribe. Get yourself a free subscription with your Amazon Prime account. Also, check out our other shows. We got one coming up later today. Do different shows of different types if you're new here. Anywhere from movie reviews, interviews like this, social issues, video games, and more. So please, I love you all. Come join our great community. And they are a great community. You are a great community. And I will see you guys on the next one. You know how to get a hold of me. kcoolmans@gmail.com. That's KCOOLMANZ@gmail.com. You email us with any kind of questions, comments, compliments, insults, input, and advice. Hit us up on our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and the Book of Faces, Facebook. When the time is right, join us in Austin, Texas. It's not the time right now because there's a pandemic going on out there. So when that is gone, we'd love to have you come through. So when that time is right, we'll see you then. But in the meantime, why don't you email us your plans? Let us know what's up. kcoolmans@gmail.com. Hit me up and let me know what your plans are for Austin, whether you are moving here or just simply passing through. All right, everybody. Again, I had a great time hanging with you today. I had a great time doing this interview. I learned a lot, which is always a bonus. I hope you learned a lot. And we will see you on the next one. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you listen to this, watching this, goodbye, and stay toasty.